Burkina Faso. A small West African country known more for military takeovers and dry land than for any major global achievement. A place the world barely looked at. No oil. No mega-cities. No flashy football leagues. Just ordinary people, surviving, hoping, praying for change. Then came a young man, Ibrahim Traoré. A soldier. A revolutionary. And to many, a mystery. He didn't come to power in a suit and tie. He didn't read long speeches written by foreign consultants. No. He came in boots, army green, and a bulletproof vest. His words were short, sharp, and from the heart. The streets loved him. The youth called him the African Lion. But no one expected what he did next. At a public gathering in Ouagadougou, surrounded by students, market women, and soldiers, Traoré grabbed the mic. He looked around, his eyes burning with something different. Then he dropped a bombshell. We will build the biggest stadium in Africa right here, in Burkina Faso. The crowd went silent. Did they hear right? A stadium? The biggest? In Burkina Faso? Some clapped. Some laughed. Many just stared. This was a country that barely had steady power. Where roads were cracked. Where children played football on dusty fields with plastic balls. Where national matches were played in old stadiums with rusted stands. But Traoré wasn't joking. He repeated it. Yes, the biggest in Africa. Not in Nigeria. Not in Egypt. Not in South Africa. Here. His voice was calm but firm. He didn't speak like someone seeking approval. He spoke like someone announcing a destiny. Why a stadium? Why now? For Traoré, it wasn't just about football. It was about pride. It was about saying to the world, we may be small, but we are not invisible. We may be poor, but we are not weak. He believed that a grand stadium, built by Burkina hands, could become a symbol. A gathering point. A national treasure. A slap in the face of those who said Africa always needs help to dream big. But not everyone was excited. In private government circles, ministers whispered, where will we find the money? What if it fails? Shouldn't we focus on roads, schools, or electricity? Even Western diplomats rolled their eyes. Another African dictator building a white elephant, one European analyst wrote. But Traoré was already moving. He didn't wait for loans. He didn't fly to Paris or Washington begging for funding. Instead, he did something that shook the old elite. He ordered a full audit of all state contracts. He froze suspicious bank accounts. He called on the army engineers, architects, and even young students from tech universities to draw up a plan. No foreign companies. No IMF. Just pure African power. He called it Project Afrique Unie, the United Africa Project. His plan was simple. 1. Use local materials. 2. Train local youth. 3. Cut out corruption. 4. Build it in phases, fast, but right. Within 3 months, bulldozers started working on a massive plot of land just outside the capital. Concrete started pouring. Foundation blocks were laid. The media couldn't keep up. At first, people were skeptical. But then, they started seeing progress. Real, physical, undeniable progress. The walls began to rise. Roads were paved around the site. Workers, young and old, worked day and night. Engineers camped on site. Even soldiers helped carry bags of cement. The people started believing. Children who once played with torn footballs now played near the construction site, dreaming of kicking the first goal in that stadium. Mothers sold food to workers nearby. Music played from radios. The place became alive. Suddenly, hope didn't feel so far. Traoré visited often, wearing a construction helmet over his army cap. He shook hands, took no special treatment, and joined the workers on site. This is not about me, he told them. This is about Africa showing the world we can build, not just beg. The Western media tried to ignore it. But the story kept growing. African influencers started tweeting. Burkina Faso is making a bold move. Traoré is changing the game. Still, the biggest question remained, can he really finish it? And if he does, What will that mean for Africa? One thing was clear, the seed had been planted. Not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. A leader had dared to dream and back it with action. Whispers had already reached Western capitals. Burkina Faso is trying to build a stadium bigger than Soccer City in South Africa, one European diplomat laughed. Impossible, another said. They don't even have a proper railway. But the whispers turned into headlines. Satellite images showed something massive growing in the heart of West Africa. Something strange. Something unexpected. It wasn't an arms base. It wasn't a foreign embassy. It was a stadium, and a monster one. And this wasn't just any stadium. It was 120,000 seats strong. Bigger than Cairo's, bigger than Abuja's, even bigger than the legendary FNB Stadium in Johannesburg. But what shocked everyone the most? There was no foreign flag on the construction site. No French contractors. No Chinese cranes. No European consultants. Just Burkina engineers, African youth, and military-trained builders wearing faded uniforms and steel helmets. That was it. The blueprint had African fingerprints all over it. It included solar-powered floodlights that would keep matches running even if national power went down. Pan-African museum halls under the stands to honor African football legends, revolutionaries, and heroes. A national youth training academy where poor children could be coached by top-tier African footballers. And even a military media tower, where national news would be broadcast from an African-controlled studio. This wasn't just a stadium. It was a bold symbol of African defiance. President Ibrahim Traoré, always in his military gear, visited the site every week. No sirens. No suits. Just boots, dust, and the sound of construction. They built the Eiffel Tower to remind us of their power, he told a local news crew. We're building this to remind them that Africa doesn't need their money to dream. Back in Washington and Paris, analysts were confused. Where is the money coming from? But inside Burkina Faso, the answer was clear. Traoré had cut millions in fake military contracts that used to be siphoned out by corrupt officials. He shut down useless ministries and redirected their budgets. He exposed oil smuggling rings, seized their profits, and channeled it into Project Afrique Uni. He wasn't building with loans. He was building with justice. At first, local elites tried to fight him. They spread rumors. The stadium is fake. They called it Traoré's fantasy. But every week, new cement pillars rose. Every month, new seats were installed. And the people saw the truth with their own eyes. Soon, neighboring countries began to notice. Delegations from Mali, Niger, and Guinea arrived not as inspectors, but as partners. Traoré welcomed them warmly. He opened the doors to their engineers, athletes, and architects. This stadium is not just for Burkina Faso, he said. It's for any African nation that dares to believe in itself. And so, their flags were added to the site. Together they formed what the local press began to call the Stadium of the New Africa. The West didn't like it. France cut back aid. The EU issued vague warnings. IMF officials refused to engage with Burkina Faso's financial ministry. But Traoré didn't blink. If they stop giving, he said, then we start building. On the ground, it became a movement. Volunteers arrived from across the region. Musicians sang songs about the stadium. It was more than construction now. It was a revolution in cement and steel. Western media tried to spin it. Traoré is isolating himself, one headline read. Burkina Faso needs food, not football, another wrote. But no one could stop what had already begun. African youth saw something different. They saw proof that leadership didn't have to mean begging. They saw that their sweat, skills, and unity could achieve what was once only possible with Western help. Traoré's team worked day and night. Weather didn't stop them. Politics couldn't slow them. By the end of the second year, the stadium was nearly complete. And it was glorious. White and gold seating, inspired by traditional African patterns. A roof shaped like a baobab leaf. Giant digital screens broadcasting in multiple African languages. Statues of Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Nelson Mandela, and Kwame Nkrumah lined the outer gate. It wasn't just a stadium. It was a message carved in concrete. Africa can build. Africa can lead. Africa can rise on its own. And as finishing touches were added, one thing was clear. The world had no choice but to pay attention. The sun rose over Ouagadougou with a new kind of energy. The city was packed. Streets were overflowing. Hotels were booked out. People were sleeping in buses, tents, and even on rooftops, all for one reason. The grand opening of the Stade de l'Afrique Unie, the biggest stadium on African soil. There had never been anything like this in West Africa. 120,000 seats. A structure so massive, it could be seen from miles away. This wasn't just concrete and steel, this was history. As the gates opened, a sea of people flooded in. Not just from Burkina Faso, but from all over Africa. Delegations came from Mali, Guinea, Niger, Ghana, Senegal, Kenya, Congo, even Algeria. Young boys wore handmade jerseys. Grandmothers wore traditional outfits. Musicians played drums and flutes, filling the air with joy and pride. The excitement was electric. As the camera drones flew over the massive stadium, one thing was obvious. This was more than an opening, it was a continental awakening. Backstage, President Ibrahim Traoré stood in his usual military uniform. No designer suit. No gold chain. No red carpet. He looked calm. Focused. Ready. And then, the moment came. Traoré stepped out, not in a convoy, not behind glass, but alone, walking through the tunnel into the open stadium, surrounded by nothing but his people. The crowd saw him. And they exploded. Roars. Cheers. Chants of Traoré. Traoré shook the entire arena. It was deafening. Fireworks lit the sky. Flags waved in every direction. There were tears in the eyes of some elders. For once, Africa was not celebrating a foreign visitor. This celebration was for their own son. Then the national anthem played, followed by a new anthem, Africa Rises, specially written by Pan-African artists. It echoed through the stadium like a war cry for the next generation. Then came kickoff. The match. A special one. Not club versus club. Not country versus country. But Burkina Faso vs the rest of Africa. The message was simple: no division. No politics. Just unity on the pitch. The match itself was intense. Fast-paced. Raw. Pure African fire. But the real show came during half-time. Traoré walked to the center of the pitch, a microphone in hand. The entire stadium went quiet. The world was watching, live streams from around the world, millions glued to their screens. He took a deep breath and spoke. They said we were too poor. They said we were too weak. They said we could not build without begging. But today, we stand here in the biggest stadium on African soil, built by Africans, for Africans. The crowd roared. This is not just a football field. This is a battlefield of ideas. A place where Africa says, we can. We will. And we just did. The entire stadium stood up. Even those watching online felt goosebumps. It was powerful. Raw. Real. After the speech, a surprise tribute began. Giant LED screens flashed faces: Thomas Sankara, Nelson Mandela, Patrice Lumumba, Steve Biko, Muammar Gaddafi, and many more. The message was clear. They tried to silence our heroes. We built a place where their dreams live on. The symbolism was too strong to ignore. Meanwhile, the Western media had no choice but to report it. CNN, Traoré shocks the world with Africa's largest stadium. BBC, a stadium without foreign help. Burkina Faso just did it. France 24, Traoré Stadium sends political message to the West. Al Jazeera, Africa's new center of power? Every headline admitted one thing: this was a turning point. Football legends across the continent sent in messages. Didier Drogba called it Africa's new temple. JJ Okocha tweeted, "I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime." Samuel Eto'o posted, "It's not just a stadium. It's a revolution." As night fell, drones lit up the sky with fireworks forming African symbols. Children danced on the pitch. Artists performed. The music was loud, but not louder than the pride echoing through the air. For the first time, the world was looking at Burkina Faso not with pity, but with respect. Traoré didn't smile for cameras. He simply stood tall, arms crossed, watching his people celebrate something they built from the ground up. No loans. No handouts. No apologies. Just unity, sweat, and belief. By morning, hashtags were trending across all social platforms. #Africa can build. #Burkina did it. #Traoré the builder. #Stadium of Africa. And the message had been sent loud and clear. Africa had just dropped a MIC in the form of a stadium.